record. All right. See if it's going yet. Taking a minute here. If we're already live, then my apologies for the delay here. Hello, it is Monday, October 6th already. Kind of unbelievable that we're already this far into the year. I don't know about you guys, but it feels like it's flown by for me. This is Solid Ground. I am Leslie Elliott Boyce. I'm speaking with Jennifer Friend, Christine Siefenwolk, and Jenny Holland. So it's nice to see you ladies today. I hope you all had a good, restful weekend. And this is our first live stream in 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks we've aired pre-recorded streams because of my travel. And so it's good to be back here with you guys. And it's good to be back here with y'all in the chat too. So I guess something that we were just chatting about right before going live, we were talking about the response to the conversation we had that we posted last week with Dr. Danny Sulikowski. And this was about women and female intersexual competition and how it contributes to societal decline. And she has some pretty strong theories on that. And we had a chance to speak with her about some of her ideas, and that video has been pretty popular. So a lot of people watched it, a lot of people commented on it. Jenny, we missed you. It would have been great to have you in the conversation, but you've caught up on the video and watched it since. And so I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you have kind of a first response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really sorry that the scheduling didn't work for us.
Yeah.
I wasn't available on the date that you guys were doing it because it's such an interesting topic. And I actually feel like I need to go back and re-listen to it in some ways, because about 99% of what she says, I just strongly agree with. And I feel like I've kind of gleaned it from a little bit from Heather Haying, and just my own observational experience dealing, in a world as a woman and watching other women, which I do very, very intently and always have. So all the stuff about how women are prized and far more valuable, and how men are throughout history have always been utterly disposable. I mean, literally, my husband was saying that to me earlier this morning before I watched the video. Like, that is something that men who grow up in like blue collar worlds are intimately familiar with. That it's an entirely different moral system. It's an entirely different relational system. So that was all really interesting. Jen, you asked her the question that I would really want, and you asked it really well as well. Like, you put it in a very sort of cogent and like relatable way. And you said, when you were younger, women were giving you advice like to hold off on marriage and children and make sure you're financially independent. And that advice was coming from a good place. And that is that intersexual competition where those women basically trying to sabotage you is kind of the where the question was going. And that's the 10% of what she says that I still don't fully understand, because I think the answer she gave was a little overly academic, and I listened to it twice and I was like, she kind of lost me both times. So that's, maybe I'm still in vacation mode and my brain isn't working. That's not to criticize her, but that is the thing that I wanted to get at, is like how on a conceptual level, it makes sense up to a point that women are actively trying to sabotage other women's breeding prospects. But the other stuff that she was saying was more interesting and more immediately obvious. That part is like, are they even aware that they're doing it? And that I don't feel like was fully made clear. A lot of the other things she was saying were very interesting. I think something that was implicit in what she's in her sort of thesis is that the figure of the mother is incredibly powerful. And even in our secular society where we've kind of tried to denature women and men, there's something very primally like forceful about the figure of the mother. And there's like a sort of a certain status that, even though in our modern society we've tried to destroy it, actively tried to destroy it, the status of the mother cannot be fully destroyed. I think that's why you see it has to be hardwired into us. I think that's part of the reason why you see these creepy men trying to breastfeed and say, trying to weasel their way into these like pregnant women groups and stuff like that, because they're lusting after this, they're fetishizing this thing that society has thrown away, but we all know deep down inside it's like super super powerful. But yeah, I actually need to, I'm gonna watch it again, is the answer to the question, because did she answer that question, Jen, to you, or did or Leslie, do you think she answered that question? Are women doing this on purpose? Are they aware they're doing it?
Not certain. I'm not certain if she fully answered that.
Yeah.
I still have sort of questions and confusion about some of it, and also just the concept that women are actively suppressing other women from having kids specifically still doesn't fully make sense to me. And what makes more sense is just the competition for males as resources.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it gets down to the granular detail of actually trying to prevent other women from having kids.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
I
that's
still need to be convinced of that, I think.
that's an area that I remain a little uncertain about as well, because I do see that there is a lot of intersexual competition. I just see it happening more on the short term.
Yes.
And so her thesis rests on the idea that sort of at some sort of subconscious level, we want to be the one standing at the end. So we want our genes to pass on. And if there's signs of societal decline, we want to be the one who produces offspring that will survive that, any kind of depopulation. And I'm not sure, I really see a lot more of the idea that why would I want to bring kids into a hard world? So uh, I don't know that people think in that sort of long-term way. I don't know that I think women's intersexual competition happens more on the short term. And that's where I remain unconvinced. But one of the things that I thought was it was really fascinating over this past week to sort of watch the comments come in on this video, because it got a lot of engagement from people. And I see a lot of frustration in the men responding. There were a lot of people who expressed gratitude for hearing a conversation like that, just be able to be had, that it was sort of apolitical and it wasn't about demonizing men. And there's been so much of that people are kind of fed up with it, and they're ready to hear a more open dialogue. I do worry, as always, about pendulum swings.
Mm-hmm.
If we can stop demonizing men, that doesn't mean we have to move on to demonizing women. I think we've all been subject to social forces that are pitting us against each other, and that it's not necessarily helpful to yell it's the patriarchy or to yell it's feminism. I think that there's something bigger than all of us happening that pits us against one another. But I do hear the frustration in a lot of the male viewers and how they've felt like they've really been gypped by society and by women. And I have a lot of sympathy with that.
Am I correct in understanding that one of her points regarding the how deliberate this is or not is that the women like that were in one or two of the studies were also showing up as having these dark triad traits.
Mhm.
So it's not maybe general population that we're talking about. I mean, that would make a lot more sense. But if you're talking about super manipulative, ambitious sociopaths anyway, like that, yeah, sure, I could believe that. Maybe I've been very lucky in my life as to not have run up against that many women like that.
Mhm, mhm.
You know.
Yeah, she did talk about that. She talked about that specifically with regard to, with regard to men on dating apps, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
And then she mentioned that this is occurring more in sociopathic women. It was just very interesting. There was a lot there.
That thing she said about the dating apps being this mishmash of men high in dark traits and women high in anxiety and neuroticism, that's actually very heartbreaking.
Mhm.
That's really sad.
I don't think it's true. I don't think it's
I-
true, though. I thoroughly
No?
disagree with it. No, I don't. I mean, it certainly gives people, all different people, access to the dating marketplace, but
yes,
this is kind of how people are meeting now.
that's
And
right.
it's, I mean, when I was on the dating app, I have met some of the nicest people I have ever met in my life. I'm still friends with many of them. I had a wonderful experience. And I just think it's just normal people. And how are they going to meet somebody if they don't meet somebody at work, or maybe they don't want to date somebody at work? And they don't want to go to bars every
Right.
night, or maybe they always say, oh, do things you're interested in. Well, what if you're a woman and your social interests are things like you like to get together with your girlfriends and knit or do crafts? You're not going to meet any
Yeah.
men. And and it just requires such a time investment to keep going out over and over and over again, and for the chance that you just might meet someone that one night. It really restricts your odds. So this idea that there's not nice people and healthy people on the dating app is completely wrong. It's just normal people and weirdos, just like it would be if you were in a bar
Right.
or joined a hiking club or whatever. I think it's, obviously the app can cause problems because people get addicted and they get sort of like a kid in a candy shop. But overall, I think it's just a brilliant idea.
I agree with that too, because I got married from somebody that I met on an app, and I think I had asked her a question about this because I met somebody that way. I know several people, several of my friends who've gotten married that way to really good people. And it's like you're saying, Jennifer, a lot of the people on those apps have tried many different ways already to meet people outside of dating apps, and the dating apps are frustrating at times. I didn't necessarily meet a whole lot of people that I would keep in touch with after, but I didn't meet a whole lot of weirdos either. I met sort of a combination of people. I wasn't on that. I was on and off, let's say. So I wasn't on for long periods of time. I would take these breaks and kind of regroup and then try different other ways to meet people. But I was off and on for a total of 10 years, I would say, before my husband came along. And he was sort of I was on an app, for the last time I was going to do it was what I was proclaiming. And I was on a trial period on one of the apps for a month, and that's kind of when it happened. So at the end of the day, I would still say my experience was positive, and I didn't agree with her on that either. So I think the blanketed statements, in general, were somewhat problematic for me throughout. I think there's a lot of points I agreed with, but there were a lot of things that were just blanketing a whole group of people and looking at the situation too broadly without giving room for there to be some slight differences or some nuances. I mean, the messaging, I got messaging about, go get a career and be on your feet before you have a family very strongly from my parents. And that came across because my mother was in a bad marriage and was really worried about being reliant on a man and feeling trapped, like you can't get out of the relationship. So that messaging, I think, was much more effective coming from my mother than it was coming from anything I got externally. And I've had quite a bit of time to reflect over that over the years. And I think that's where that messaging was more powerful. Not to say I blame my mom for how long it took me to meet someone. I'm happy with how things turned out. I think it ended up working out really well for me. But yeah, so I just felt some overgeneralization, I guess you would say. And I see parts of her argument that are accurate for sure, that I would say were resonating with me, and there were parts of her argument that didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's always kind of a delicate balance. When you're talking with someone who studies social trends, then you're going to hear things spoken in sort of a general way. And you and Jennifer are therapists, so you're used to working with people one-on-one. So it's very different to dive in and see the one-on-one versus the big picture.
That is so true.
But I wonder if there could be some truth to the dating app thing, that you might see overrepresentation of certain sorts of characteristics. Not that it describes everybody who's on there, but that, in a place where people are coming together because they haven't been successful in finding someone in, somebody said in the wild. I thought that was cute. Who's that? One of our comments here said, sour kiwi. I'm so glad I met my husband in the wild. So if you haven't been successful, or a lot of times you're divorced and finding other people who are also divorced, you might see a tendency to have a higher representation of either characteristics that might make you difficult to be in a relationship with, or that might make you someone who has a hard time settling down with someone, anxiety or callousness or things like that. So I don't know. I agree that it doesn't seem to describe everybody on a dating app for sure. Let's see, we had some good comments here. David Moore, there may be normal people, but the selection bias prefers discontent, relationally unstable daters. Okay, so that's one. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. The dating app thing is so interesting. I wish that there was a better solution to the
Mhm.
way that people have isolated in modern times. It's very hard.
I've
but
never been on one.
I was on one for a few months, and it felt very weird. I mean, you're really judging people on these really superficial things. They've got only so much space to write about themselves, and then you're looking at photos. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, oftentimes I'm not attracted to someone in a photo that might be really attractive to me in real life. So it's very hard to get a sense of, or vice versa. You might find somebody very attractive in a photo and then you meet them in real life and there's just no chemistry or
Yeah.
something's a
Oh,
little bit weird.
absolutely.
So,
I mean, I was on and off them for 10 years. So
Mhm.
the amount of people that I met that way, I mean,
mhm.
it's quite a bit. I mean, there's a little bit of luck involved, I think, as well. Maybe
Mhm.
some serendipity or some, kind of meant to be component. I don't know. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
there's
I
definitely some
think
bad experiences too.
I think the thing that I found interesting about that though is because it sort of like perfectly encapsulates two of like the defining negative factors that have really harmed culture in the last 20 years, driven on by internet are those two traits, the sort of sociopathic manipulator and the neurotic anxiety person. And actually, they don't actually have to be. I don't think those are gendered necessarily, although obviously women do tend to be much higher in neuroticism and stuff like that. But those two factors are so harmful to people, to society. I mean, they've caused real and concrete harm. And they drove like those things really drove a lot of the COVID awfulness, the fracturing of friendships and families.
Yeah.
Those were the things. It was the neuroticism and the manipulation. So the thought of them kind of being together on like meeting each other on an app and causing each other further unhappiness. Actually, it seemed. I just feel like I find in my when I did one of those personality tests, I did Jordan Peterson's one, and I was like really low in neuroticism. And very, very high in open-mindedness, like so open-minded, my brain's going to fall out kind of thing. But I feel for people who live in a permanent state of fear and stress about like the minor things of life or things you have no control over. I think that must be a
Right.
truly hellish way to live. But also it's like something I couldn't be around. Like I wouldn't be able to have that in my life. Like it would just drive me insane because I just don't have the patience for it. I'm too blunt. And so yeah, I thought that was interesting. Like, and I think her stuff about men is great actually. And I think her criticism of sort of the negative traits of femininity are fantastic. They're great. completely buy that. I buy all that. But I don't, like I said before, I don't see how that actually is a deliberate, like because I was just looking at the transcript there to try and remember, and she's like, we're dealing with intense levels of intersexual competition for like for breeding suppression. And I was like,
Mhm, mhm.
are we? I mean, and I think your point, Leslie, was that, but there's no female Bill Gates. There's no the practical direct reasons for not having children seem like they'd be more influential. And there's
Mhm.
so many of those reasons.
There are
Whether
so
it's
many reasons. You could always
yeah,
come up with so many more reasons nowadays, especially not to have kids than to have kids.
yeah,
It, um,
yeah. Like
it
I just got
almost
done
defies
reading
all logic.
I got done reading Bad Therapy as well, which is in the beginning was like, oh my God, this is all so obvious. But actually, there's a lot of great like research in there and these anecdotes that really hair-raising anecdotes. Like there's a very, very obvious reason why a lot of people don't want to have children apart from the financials, which is real. Like people raise children to be horrible little brats and they ruin your life. Like,
Mm.
and if that's all, like that's what culture represents. So like if that's all you're seeing, then you're not going to want to have kids. Why would you? It's a nightmare,
Mhm.
Or if you were raised in a family where your mother was always groveling and kissing your ass, and your parents were super unhappy because you were such a terror to live with, and you grow up. One thing I've noticed of people who even were when they were kind of spoiled, like we used to say in the old days, they grow up and I've known people like this, and they're very sane, and they look back and they think, why was I allowed to be like that? Like that, I think people mature usually very often mature well just by the process of growing up. Like, I don't know, is it a neurological thing? So a lot of people who are now cutting off family members, and in Abigail Schreier's book, it's sort of like, well, these were parents who catered to your every whim and ruined their own lives to kiss your ass. And the ultimate kick then is like then that kid grows up and is like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. But actually, I wouldn't blame that kid.
Mhm, mhm.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, to your comment about the there's no female Bill Gates. I I really see this as being something that's beyond a male female thing. This is a social movement, this population control thing. And I wouldn't point at the Bill Gateses and say, see, it's men doing it. I would
Mhm.
say it's not a specifically female or male thing. It's the people in power have decided that we have too many of us, and they're using the means that they can to convince us not to have as many children. And I I I think also there's this big question that I'm curious what your all's thoughts are about this, but the idea that we've got this right now, a divergence in political persuasion between men and women, with more women representing this far left progressive set of thoughts. And there are questions about why that is. Dr. Eric Kaufman talked about female tendency to support the status quo, the power structure of a given time, that women will be the ardent pushers of whatever that is. And I also think you've got years and years of education that's been directly suppressing masculinity. You've got just from the little boy, like my son, when he was 5, and I put him in school at 6. I put him into kindergarten at 6. He was really precocious. He's a bright kid. It had nothing to do with his intelligence. It had everything to do with the fact that I knew his personality was going to be squashed by being forced to sit when his body wasn't capable of it. I wanted him to have a little bit more time to just be wild and run around. And that's been talked about for ages, that little girls tend to be more able to sit and do the reading and writing and coloring and things like that. And little boys have this high level of energy where they need to be running around, and it squashes them to sit them in chairs. And then they get diagnosed with ADHD, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got that kind of squashing of masculinity, but you also have the direct squashing of masculinity, like what you get in this sort of progressive postmodern teaching that says that white men are the greatest evil and we need to support the minority and the marginalized. And so that gives women an edge in this educational structure. Now we see more and more females dominating these education programs as students, as faculty. And so women are getting stroked while men are getting lectured to. And so is it any wonder that it would be women who would say, yeah, this is great. We're going to talk about this, and men who would be stepping back and being a little bit skeptical. So it just seems like we've groomed a couple of generations into promoting women as the pushers of this ideology, and we've alienated men from it. So it doesn't seem like it's something that has to be from our biology or our evolutionary psychology. It's kind of directly from what we've been teaching kids and young people.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are on that. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, I think I think that like what you said, there's so many imminent, like direct in your face, explicit social engineering projects going on that will create the same result. That yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think, and I mean, again, reading Bad Therapy and reading Feminism Against Progress back to back, which I just did, like literally, yes, I finished one yesterday, one today. There's so many anecdotes in there that are devastating, devastating accounts of the sort of self-loathing that has been inculcated in boys and girls, in boys, but by this, and I think it's a Fabian sort of, I think it's like a Fabian utopian worldview, which says that we can sort of sanitize everything and raise everyone up, and everything will be of the mind. And underneath that is basically eugenics. That's what underpins it. And it presents this like very mild and peace-loving utopian fantasy, but actually, but beneath it is like, well, yeah, but we actually have to get rid of 2/3 of humanity. We just need to kill them off. So that's really disturbing. But the social engineering in the education system on the children, that has been, boys made to feel like evil demons, worthless. I mean, what a crime against children. And then the girls taught to fear their own bodies and fear that hitting puberty will mean that they're immediately going to be like raped all the time or something. I mean, what an absolute crime that progressivism has committed against children for, I don't know how you guys tell me, you guys are in the States, 20 years longer, maybe.
Well,
Maybe
and
longer.
things like signs saying the future is female. Talk about being exclusionary. I just think that's really creepy to talk that way.
The thing, like the thing that makes me uncomfortable, like nothing about this makes me uncomfortable, but I don't, the balance between male and female positive traits is so far out of whack. And here in the UK, I've been seeing a few things recently where I can't remember the sources exactly, but a lot of this, because of this migrant crisis, quote unquote, there's been some reporting that said that a lot of these men are coming, they all have access to porn, they all have access to social media, and they come to Europe thinking like, basically we're all like turbo whores, and we're up for it at any moment, and we're just available. We're fully available at all times to these men coming in. That's the impression. But the problem with that is, because especially younger women, certainly not women like us anymore, dears, but like, there has been an extreme internet promiscuity culture. And the man-woman dynamic, men and women keep each other in check in different ways. Nothing is keeping that kind of female energy in check anymore. The older women aren't keeping it in check anymore, and the dads aren't keeping it in check anymore. And at a certain point, how is this going to be stopped en masse? Like, I don't understand how this is actually going to end unless you literally turn off the internet. I actually wrote about this a few weeks ago. This is not a political issue. This is not a philosophical issue. We have, actually, going to your woman's point, a sort of status games going on where we see young people see videos, girls especially, videos of other girls, and they're mimicking. We're mimetic. We're not philosophical. We're not political. We're mimetic. So we're mimicking what these other girls are doing, and the high status girls are, they're queers, or they're this or they're that, and they're adopting all of these identities that are then kind of contagious. And the only way to stop that is like with a short, sharp sort of, slap on the face. I don't mean it literally, but like an authority to come along and say that is not how we behave in a civilized society, with a very sharp repercussion. And like, I'm kind of taking a small example and kind of making it big, but the balance being so out of whack, where girls, having, you said, like, have been stroked for so long and told they're so powerful. Well, I'm sorry, we're not actually, because if a man comes along and punches us in the face, there is fuck all we can do about that. And we are not going to be able to like hi-ya kick them because we went to karate and we saw all the Marvel movies. That's not how it works. We literally can't actually defend ourselves. So, yeah, like, this is also like that, this heavy toxic female societal game. It's concerning to me. It's concerning.
Yeah, it is concerning. It's interesting. I'm looking at some of the comments here. Manimal 2011, so much simping. I guess that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Simping. Weeba Cans, thank you for the super chat. The apps are bad and female intersexual competition too, but the postmodern mental health crisis also made dating worse. Wokeism is integral to that. I think that, and Morning Cigar also, thank you for your super chat. The porn is such an elephant in the room in all of this, and you're bringing that up. It is, I think that it just does not get enough attention for how it's changing people's perceptions of themselves and each other. We've got so much data that shows that porn consumption changes the way you see other people. It changes the level of empathy that you're capable of having towards other people, because you're training yourself to
Yeah.
see people as objects for your gratification, over and over, just being used. And there's such a corruption that happens there. It's people want to point fingers. This is the whole thing, the whole simping idea. I don't think that it makes sense to blame men or to blame women. I think it makes sense to look at how we're all impacted by these things and what we're doing to ourselves and each other, because it manifests differently for men and for women, but it's happening to both. Porn is an exploitation of male sexuality through the use of female sexuality, and it's an exploitation of female sexuality through the use of male sexuality. It's a tremendously toxic thing that we've unleashed to great detriment.
Yeah, and it's abusive to both,
Mm.
both the male and the female viewer and participant, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I actually try not to dwell on because it's so overwhelming, but it's like, only a very small sliver of the global population for a very, very short period of time has lived by these morals, or lack thereof, I suppose you could say. But this sort of like choose your own adventure, anything goes, the only thing is that matters is your personal fulfillment. That is completely ahistorical, and the rest of the world, I would suspect strongly, is looking on at Anglo culture and thinking, I mean, to be the most charitable would be, what is wrong with them? And probably there's a lot more hard-headed, sort of like, yeah, well, we'll easily be able to take that over, because look at the state of them. They are addled, they're fat, they're sick, they're old, they're not reproducing, all of those criticisms would actually be true. Their women are whores. Sorry. I don't mean that literally, but I mean, like you can make a case for that. Okay, you can absolutely make a case for that. There's a lot of women making a lot of money off being whores. And they should stop, obviously, but I don't have, no one has power to stop them. Nobody has the power to stop them.
Mhm,
There's
mhm.
a lot of men making money off of it on the back end. I get it. I'm being somewhat flippant, but no, like I think as in the States, especially not being, not having like constant reminders of the old world around you all the time, people tend to not realize that like this has never happened before, and no one else has lived like this before in such comfort in some ways, and in such luxury, I guess, even though I guess it's kind of getting worse a little bit, but and in such freedom. Like freedom is really a foreign concept to in history. And I think like this is where the evolutionary part is actually really interesting, because like are we just proving that we are in fact monkeys that can't really handle the freedom? We need the hierarchy. I think that's her implication, and I think I basically agree with that. Even though that makes me very uncomfortable. Like I'm saying I agree with it, but not in a yay kind of I'm so happy I agree with this kind of way, in a way that like, holy crap, where does that leave us?
Mhm. And so if we establish that, then what's the way forward that creates equilibrium
Yeah.
without overcorrection?
I don't think it can happen without an overcorrection.
Hmm.
I don't think it can
Christine,
happen.
you look like you
Yeah,
had to
I
bite your
mean,
tongue there.
yeah, no, I think I think it's very complicated with the whole porn and the escort, the sex industry in general. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people get involved in it. There's a lot of reasons why women decide to go that route to earn money. I've known plenty of women in this industry. I live in north of Los Angeles, but I used to live right in the heart of LA. And I've met a lot of women in and out of that industry that were participating in it for a number of reasons. And the whole way society is sort of structured in general, I mean, anything from single mothers to people that were drug addicts to people that were paying their way through college, through graduate school, to go on to become lawyers. I mean, to cover expenses. I mean, the structure of society at its kind of core elements, the foundation of how we're built, leads people to make decisions to earn money in these kinds of ways. And so I'm very hesitant to judge or be very judgmental about people that are in the sex industry. Now, do I think it should be as easy to access as it is? No. Do I think people should, even as young as 18 is too young? I don't think your brain is fully formed enough to make the decision to either enter the adult industry and or watch it happen. So that's a whole nother, piece of it. But why people choose to do that, is very multi-layered. So I think it's really easy to kind of condemn it, but it's a little bit more complicated to understand why. And I think that's just the piece that I wrestle with a lot. So that's what's been on my mind through this conversation.
It kind of goes back to the question that Jennifer raised, which was around what are the intentions behind this kind of advice that says, protect yourself,
Right.
watch out for your own needs, and be sort of skeptical and cynical about what the world has to offer. And I think that advice, like to a young woman through the feminist era, of make sure that you've got your education and your career, don't depend on a man, is really kind of similar to the advice you see right now in the sort of red pill space. Don't trust a woman, take care of yourself, don't let yourself get taken, because you're going to get wiped out and cheated on and left, and you'll be lonely. So just keep your relationships with women in a compartmentalized pocket. Don't get married. And it seems like what this all comes down to is society flourishes when people are not demoralized, when people have
Yeah.
the most faith in a positive outcome. And when people start to become demoralized and give up hope and start acting self-interestedly and selfishly and with fear and anxiety, that aggregates and you see the trend go downward. So the only answer is to fight demoralization with a leap of faith. Although
I
that
think you're
can be
right,
at
because
great cost to
you're
oneself.
right, because this is creating essentially a low trust society. And in a low trust society, it's really hard to build a business, to do business with others if you don't think that they're going to follow through on what they say they're going to do. And it's the same thing in male-female relationships. If there's no trust and we're training people not to trust, don't marry a woman, she'll, cheat on you and then divorce you, and you won't have custody of your kids, and she'll take all your money, or don't rely on a man because he's going to mistreat you, and then you won't have your own career and you won't be able to leave. All these warnings, I think they're well intended, but I think they're also kind of overstated, and what's not being taught is more how to how to work together cooperatively. I mean, how can you build a family with someone and build careers and support each other in building careers if you have no trust and you're constantly side-eyeing your partner for, are you going to leave? Are you going to cheat? Are you going to empty out the investments? It is a risk to be with somebody and to build a life with somebody, but people have been doing it for centuries. I would argue it's worth the risk. I don't know that we want to train people to have low trust. And I'll tell you the thing that women aren't being told, which I think maybe this is what you want to tell them. If you can have this whole I'm going to finish my education first and then get to a certain level in my career before I have kids. Okay, fine. But what's also happened to women now is they're doing all the same stuff that men are doing, but they're still doing almost everything at home with the kids, and they're exhausted and burnt out and resentful. And there's not a lot of warnings about that. That's what we've kind of created.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
myth of work, that work is
Yeah.
fulfilling for women.
Yeah, that this is going to be fulfilling, that this is going to give you your freedom. No matter what, you could be financially reliant on a husband who's either kind to you or mistreats you, or you could be financially reliant on a job that's kind to you or mistreats you. It's not like, oh, your job treats you so great. No, there's plenty of jobs where they're constantly threatening to, pip you or do something to you if you don't meet certain goals. There's It's just different struggles.
Nachema Gluck, thank you for the super chat. He or she, I don't know your gender, men have the power to stop them. They could stop purchasing those services en masse and the demand and market would collapse. But then men would need to have principles and values and adhere to them. That's regarding what Christine was saying about the sex industry. And it's absolutely true that if you cut off the demand, the market for it tanks. And at the same time, if you cut off the supply, the market for it tanks. So men could stop this if men had a hive mind and could just determine that they were going to stop, and women could stop this if women had a hive mind and were determined to stop it. And the fact is that, kind of going back to that idea of the dark triad, you're always going to have people who are willing to engage in things that are antisocial. And they're going to be
Sure.
men and they're going to be women. So it takes more people lifting themselves out of that to affect a decrease, if that's going to happen without authoritarian power. If it's going to happen because somebody turned off the internet or made strict laws, then started enforcing them, then that comes top down. But if you want to see it happen without authoritarianism, it's going to happen because more people saw a better way.
Yeah. The thing is, it's the dark traits are orchestrating, I guess, propagandizing or teaching young people that doing this thing is no big deal. And that's the problem. Like it's not, that's just not the case. It is a big deal. And there's always been sex work. There's always been prostitution. There's always been showgirls of one kind or another. There's always been a demi-monde of men and women actually who are sexually available for payment, sex workers. But what we've done now is we've kind of like democratized that and said to normies, just utterly normal young girls, oh, actually, you know, you don't have to work in a supermarket. You don't have to have a boring, mundane job. You can be on OnlyFans instead. And that's actually very bad. That's a bad thing. We shouldn't have done that to young girls. And, you know, we should absolutely have said to young boys starting about 20 years ago, I guess, porn is disgusting. And if you're caught, you will pay a social shame penalty. But instead, we went the other way. And as this woman makes the point, and I think maybe I'm getting her mix of Mary Harrington certainly makes the point in the book. Women are the, oh no, it was Eric Kaufman that you mentioned, Leslie. Women are the status quo enforcers and the status quo makers. So women have played a huge role in that process of telling young girls that it's okay to be a hoe. It's great. It's fun. It's glamorous. You get to go to Dubai, X, Y, and Z. Toxic garbage. It's toxic garbage. And that's, so it's not it's escaped the lab. Like it's no longer just the dark traits who are doing this because they are kind of outside the bounds. Now we have it like a normalization epidemic of it.
Yes, that's very true.
From Kay, telling women to be able to be financially independent doesn't have to prevent them from getting married. It's that women are being pushed into advanced degrees and work that isn't family friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
SW says, Miss Perry, talking about Louise Perry, would outlaw the industry. Remember, Christ offers salvations and also executes judgment. I don't know. Yeah, I would also outlaw the industry. I mean, honestly, I would make.
I would too.
What, pornography, you mean?
All
sex work in general.
Market-based sex work. I would outlaw the exchange of money for any kind of sex. That's what I would do that. You know, another thing, it's interesting. I haven't watched a lot of movies in a long time. I lived without a TV for a really long time and kind of stayed away from a lot of that. Started watching shows a few years ago and TV series were becoming popular. And I think that that's such a cool art form. The way that you can extend a story and let it develop slowly. And so now when I go back and watch a movie, it feels like, oh, so much is left out. This is really crammed and condensed. When you watch a good series, you just get so much more full art. But going back and watching some movies that were just mainstream movies in like the 80s and 90s, something that really stands out to me is that obligatory sex scene. That it's so interesting how we made sex this like graft onto a story. Like, oh, here's the action movie and then nipples, you know. It's just like this obligatory feature. And so I know this is a bit of a choppy segue, but I've seen some of the criticisms recently over Netflix having really sexualized content for kids, where they are promoting trans characters or lesbian romance, things like that, in just your standard kids shows. And some of the people who've been pointing that out and criticizing it have had counter criticisms saying, well, what about all this other sexual content? And they'll show like the Prince Charming kissing Snow White or something like that. And I don't know, where is a line? Somebody else in the chat just a little while ago, I think it was David Moore, said something about a line between porn and erotica, and that he thinks that we should I guess take a look at that there's some things that should be acceptable while other things maybe have gone too far. I know it's a tricky thing to navigate because there's some subjectivity there, but What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I think
I'm-
back in the day, it would have been a lot harder to navigate, but now it's very obvious because porn is so, I mean, like, you know what it is. And,
Mhm.
erotica, I would say erotica is like word based. And also, yeah, like the porn industry is so out in the extremes. I think that's pretty clear nowadays.
Mhm. And what about the sexualized content for kids? Like
Oh,
a lesbian, how would you make an argument, or would you make an argument that a lesbian romance scene with two girl characters kissing is different than Prince Charming kissing Snow White?
I would. Oh, sorry, my mom's calling me. Sorry.
That's okay. Christine, you look like you were going to
Alright.
say something a moment ago. Mm,
No, I don't think I'm just marinating.
marinating. Yeah. Well, this was something that came up a lot in my human sexuality course that I took in graduate school for my counseling program, was that we have centered cis heteronormativity is a kind of catchphrase, and that we need to decenter that there must be representation of other forms of romance
Yeah.
and love in order to destigmatize transsexuality, homosexuality, other sorts of things. So I guess I think that it's fine to center cis heteronormativity because that's the life-giving act. That's the life-giving force. That's the cradle of the family and the basis for a prosperous and healthy life and society.
Yeah.
I don't think that you necessarily have to demonize other forms of romance by doing that, but I really do think it's highly destructive to start decentering, if they want to use their postmodern phrase, that thing that is most functional and most beneficial to society. So I guess that would be, yeah, Morning Cigar objects to the word cis. Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
But I think it's centered because it is central. The vast majority of people are hetero, and therefore it sort of should be the default assumption. If someone is not, well, then
Yeah.
okay. But the default assumption should be that, because that's what's usually true.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think also, like, actually, like, people who are same-sex attracted, there's quite a small number of people, right? Like, overall in society, like on a kind of epidemiological scale. And the thing when you're introducing same-sex love romance to small children, I mean, this is going to sound like a bit like Bible bashing, but like you're going to create, like you're going to create confusion in children where they mistake their intense friendships, especially girls have very intense friendships with each other, for being same-sex attracted. And why would you add that confusion? Because like the odds are you're probably not really. And just leave everything at factory settings. And when everyone is grown up and everyone has a little bit of savoir faire, and you want to try something else, have at it. Go ahead. But that's not something you want to model for children. Children are they're spongy. They want to mimic. They're very suggestible. This is why the trans thing was such a nightmare.
Mhm.
And obviously, for adults, there's nothing wrong with two women in a relationship. And I've been, I'm at a point where I've spoken to people who, are the one woman I spoke to said she was the product of LGBTQ science. And, children really do want a mother and a father. That's what they want. Like little children growing up in families and single parent families and same-sex families. Like, I really do believe that in my heart of hearts, and I'm sure there's data that says otherwise, and I would not believe it if I was shown it. Children want a mother and a father. And then when they don't have it, they yearn for it. And it creates the kind of longing.
Yeah, that's my question then, is that what happens when you have and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm just asking honestly, just what happens then when you have a kid who's raised by two men or a kid who's raised by two women? They're going to ask questions about, having two moms or two dads, and how that love is different from them having a best friend who's the same sex. So how does that get handled or managed? I mean, that's, going to show up in the actual household, not just as something that they see on television or in a movie, but something that they're living daily.
I
So
think that their questions get countered by creating sort of a defensive pride. And I think pride is sort of a defensive, I guess, mechanism. It's a I am proud of this, so you can't assail it. And so if you're a kid who's growing up like that, you're most likely being taught to be proud of that. And so it's a mask for whatever wounds might lie beneath it, whatever loss might lie beneath that. You are essentially growing up without half of your family growing up like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's not to say that people can't grow up and be happy and well adjusted in
That's,
those
yeah,
kind of
I
families.
agree. Yeah.
Can be.
And the same thing applies to kids who are adopted into
Yeah.
with straight couples and whatnot,
Exactly.
and children who, for whatever unfortunate reason, lost a parent.
Mhm.
You always are searching for your ancestries. Like, you want to know, you want to meet the people who look like you.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a natural instinct. I remember watching this documentary about this boy who he was born from an anonymous sperm donor. Had a very loving mom, but he longed for a father figure his entire youth, and this extended into his adulthood. And I do think there's just an instinct of wanting a mom and a dad. And even when if you talk to people who start dating somebody who has kids, but the opposite sex parents not involved, the kids they will start asking questions about if that person is, their mom or their dad. Are you
Mhm.
going to be my mommy? Are you going to be my daddy? It is such an deeply ingrained instinct.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I don't think we know as a society exactly what happens to that when a kid is raised in different circumstances. I don't think we know good, bad, and different. I just don't think we don't really have, I guess, the longitudinal studies at this point.
I want to read a comment, but first I just have to say it's really soothing to watch Henry just be blissed out, getting his ears stroked.
I know. Oh my
Soothing for me
gosh.
too. He's making
Yeah.
me all sleepy, the little turkey.
That's really sweet.
Yes.
I can imagine a whole
So
YouTube
sweet.
channel just stroking a sleeping dog.
I love it.
Josephina Hatton says, it has to do with teaching pleasure. The writing is all over the walls. And this is in regard to the decentering cis heteronormativity. And that's something that I've been asking this question for a long time and trying to see what other people see. I want to understand how other people view this issue. I think we've created through our education programs this idea that sex is just pleasure and consent based. There's no other moralities should govern human sexuality but pleasure and consent. And I think that's terribly destructive because you're messing with the very stuff of life. You're messing with it. It's only a step from that to devaluation of life itself. It's one little tiny step away. And that's been something that has been going on for a long time. I mean, the sexual revolution is a place where we all kind of point back and say, wow, there was a leap that was made there there's a reason why religions and governments have focused so heavily on restricting sexuality and putting limits around it. And you see it in some places it's very, very, very strict, and other places not so much. But there's always been a lot of focus on what is right and good in terms of sex and sexuality. And I think for good reason, because we see what's happening once it goes off the rails. You get to a place of utter chaos with regard to sex.
Yeah, exactly. That is actually what's happened.
I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the tube though. Like, I don't think we can just sort of turn back the clock and try to regulate it in the way that we used to. I think we're going to have to sort of find a new pathway to looking at it more consciously and deliberately and ethically. And I don't know what that is. I can't really begin to imagine.
Oh,
Mm.
right. Yeah, David LeBoy says Leslie has once again brought up this term morality, and I don't know what her definition of it is. So I'll look it up for you if you want and read what the definition of morality is. Morality is the quality of being in accord with standards of right or good conduct, a system or collection of ideas of right and wrong conduct. Virtuous conduct. That's the first definition that comes up from the American Heritage Dictionary. It is morality is what a culture decides is right and good, what a family decides is right and good, what an individual decides is right and good. I'm not trying to push my morality. I'm asking, what is this morality based on? And there's an argument to be made that sexual morality is based on what is best for the products of sexual procreation, which is children, families, people. And so if you craft a morality around what raises good, healthy people, it's going to look different than if you craft a morality around what feels good and what I want, what my id wants, what I want right now, what my body wants. And so I'm not trying to impose a system of morality. I could argue for one, but I'm asking what have we done? Because we've certainly moved from one set of beliefs and morals to another. And I just want to know what other people think. What have we done? How did we get here? How can we go back to something that seems more life-giving and life-supportive and less destructive?
It's funny because I was about to say that liberals have a problem with when you bring up the word morality and morals, because that infers that there's things that are immoral that therefore liberals should stop doing, and they don't like it when that happens. And like clockwork, it always happens. There's always going to be somebody triggered by that. And I mean, I think you put it really, really, really elegantly, Leslie, but I would be a little blunter and say, like, we didn't come up with this notion. You didn't come up with this notion. The four of us sitting here did not come up with this notion. These are things that are ingrained in us for millennia. Okay. And again, to go back to my point earlier, to think that we can suddenly pluck out of thin air a society where morality is only the thing that you like and that makes you feel good is borderline demented. It's literally never worked. Like, this is not you saying this, it's not me saying this, not you being judgy or anyone being judgy. It is just a material reality. And I think liberalism has a lot to answer for, because it's kind of we've all, and material liberalism paired with material prosperity have allowed us to live in this bubble where we were for a brief time thought that there was no consequences to our actions, and now we're starting to see more consequences, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, I think that the best time to be alive is probably in a liberal society that's deeply rooted in a conservative society.
Yes.
So sort of an emerging space that has a deep foundation of stability, and now you get to play. But once you've gone a couple of generations out with everybody playing, you're in chaos. And that's when the overcorrection comes up. So,
yeah. And the first time I was on with you guys was, I think, to talk about my parents and their open marriage and all that stuff. And that's basically what I said. I lived in a conservative society, in like a libertine family, and we were left alone. My parents did what they pleased. I had a relatively stable, by today's standards, upbringing. It's much easier to be a freak in a sort of traditional bounded society at Western norms than it is to be a conservative Western norms person in a freak society. Like, the freak society doesn't work. The freak society falls apart.
Yeah, no adults. Well, any final thoughts, you guys, before we close out for the day? It's a lot of great comments. Thank you so much for everybody in the chat. I'm going to try to get my tech support husband to get the other platform to work so that our volume is decent, so we can use that, because I love being able to put y'all's chats on the screen. And right now we're just using Zoom, so we can't do that. Josephina Hatton says, coming from a conservative upbringing, there was a struggle with morals also. What I see is a volleying between left and right. There are patterns to hide it and a desire to put it in the open. John Noonan says, great discussion that went deep and had nuance. Great comments in chat too. Keep thinking, everyone. Yeah, there's so much here. We'll just have to call it though. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you, ladies, for having this conversation today, and everybody take care.